Okay, good morning. Woo! Excitement. Okay, so Peter's not here, sad face. He actually got trapped in Philadelphia due to the rain that we were having in Tampa yesterday. Um, but one of his favorite guitar players, Kurt Rosenwinkel, just happened to be playing there, so he got to see him last night, so that's cool. So he is supposed to come back tomorrow morning, so just hold him in your heart, as Jared suggested, as a form of praying for someone. Pray that he gets back to us safely. Um, we have Raina here for the first time on BGVs. Woo! Let's go! You know him, you love him. Dave is on drums. And Will is back here performing magic tricks. He's playing a hybrid guitar, which has bass and guitar. Give it up. And I'm Deanna. I'm going to be singing some stuff. I'm playing some stuff. Oh, and can you stand with us, please? Because we're going to live it well, because that's the name of the song. Take the burden from my arms. This is the sound of my beginning. This is the song of the reading. It was the rhythm of your dancing that won me from my sin. This is the sound of open flame. All your children coming home. I can hear the sound of heaven singing over us. Oh. I make time for what I want. I choose my priorities. Jesus, you're my number one. Yes, Jesus, you're my number one. I will make room for you. I will prepare for two, so you don't feel that you can't live here. Please live in me. I will make room for you. I will prepare for two, so you don't feel that you can't live here. Please live in me. Please live in me. My will, my way, my ego, my plan, my schedule, my itinerary. But see, I will make room for you. My whatever it is, it's not like you. Whatever it is, you can move me on. See, I will make whatever it is. That's in your way. Do whatever it is. If it takes your place, whatever it is. See, I want it. See, I will make room, yeah. I will keep you first. And the only other way, wanna seek you first. Keep it all the way. See, whatever it is, Lord, I just want you. See, I will make room, yeah. Whatever it is, please just move it over. Help me move it over. Help me move it over. Jesus, I just want you to know. See, I will break room. I find space for what I treasure. I make time for what I want. I choose my priorities. Jesus, you're my number one.
Yeah, you guys, just give it up for the Different Church Band. And they are awesome. I always in awe when I see all these talented people. I'm like, man, wish I were that talented. And awesome to have Raina up here today. What a great treat for us to have a backup vocalist. Really appreciated that. And as always, I've got some announcements for you guys. And if you just pull out your phone and go to diff.church, and which actually takes you to a website that's diffchurch.com. I'll clarify that, Jarrett. But you can find out all kinds of cool things about the church, who we are. One of the things that I really appreciated about was we're a church of questioners, and that's definitely me. And today we're going to go to, it's called Three Daughters, and it says that there are so many daughters. Could there be any more daughters? There's my little friend's jab for you. But we're going to go there today after church, and it's just a hop and a skip like down that way. Thank you for the point. And we're going to have some also on the Diff Church website. We have a list of events. And one of the things we're going to do as a church, because we're largely a pretty nerdy community, I think, a lot of us. Yeah. We're going to go see, thank you. We're going to go see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness on Sunday, May the 8th at a place in Tampa called Look Cinemas. It's a Cinebistro style restaurant where you get to sit down, order some food and drinks if you prefer. And this is going to be a lot of fun for us. That's at 4 p.m. Starts at, 3:30-ish. And the tickets are available. They're $5 a piece at the Diff Church website. You can click the RSVP link and go there and learn all about it. Now, before I get to my dad joke, I just wanted to share something with you that on Friday, I went through a very traumatic event, and my beloved Remy, orange tabby cat, as of 10 years, he lost his fight to kidney disease, and you can see him up here. That's my boy. And he's on his way to wherever we go after this, playing with all the other cats. And what I wanted to say about that is, I'm grieving, and I'll continue to grieve for a while. But I just got to say that I thank God for, one, leading me to Different Church last year. And I thank Different Church with this so much heartfelt gratitude for helping me keep it together and helping me get through this time with all these personal messages and times when we get to hang out like that. You don't know how much that means, guys. I just want to express that to you. So give yourselves a round of applause for being so awesome. Thank you. Now, I've been waiting on this joke for a couple weeks. Because Jarrett had to steal my thunder last week. So, Americans call them elevators. The British call them lifts. Yep. I guess they were raised differently. And with that, give it up for Pastor Hannah.
That was the best joke you've done. 10 out of 10, Rick. Hi, friends. Hi. Hello. Okay, we're going to do something different today. How many times can I use that joke? Literally every Sunday for the end of time. The name is called Different Church. We've been talking through the book of John, all these stories, and we're going, obviously, up to Easter, which is in 2 weeks. Yeah. Did you know that? What is time? It was yesterday that it was like March 2020, and then now it's Easter 2022, and I don't know what happened. But we've been moving through John, and today we're talking about Lazarus. Have any of you heard the story of Lazarus before? Cool. It's very long. It's a solid 45 verses in the book of John, chapter 11, I'm guessing, because I didn't write it in my notes. I only wrote the first numbers. So instead of reading the whole thing to you up front and making you all fall asleep, even though I am delightful, okay? I'm very dramatic when I read. We're going to do something completely different. We're going to break it into 4 chunks. And I'm not going to read it at all. In fact, Joe is going to read it. So we're going to read a section, and then we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to read a section, and then we're going to talk about it. And it's going to be great.
Just hop around like that, though.
I will.
Yes, I'm nervous. A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Lord, your dear friend is very sick." But when Jesus heard about it, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this." So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." But his disciples rejected. "Rabbi," they said, "only a few days ago, the people in Judea were trying to stone you. Are you going there again?" Jesus replied, "There are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger of stumbling because they have no light." Then he said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him up." The disciples said, "Lord, if he is sleeping, he will soon get better." They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus had died. So he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you will really believe. Come, let's go see him." Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let's go too and die with Jesus."
You do have to clap after every single section. Thank you. Okay, section 1. I have no titles for these. We're just jumping in. God doesn't play games with us, despite what perhaps we have been taught. God doesn't toy with us or string us along. And yet, God's ways are not our ways. God's timing, mostly, is not our timing. And I think a very striking reminder of this is in verse 6, when Jesus gets this message from the two sisters, his dear friends. The cry for help, the emergency, like, "Come here right now," text, /pigeon. And he stayed where he was for 2 days. He didn't mention it to the disciples. He didn't make preparations to go. He didn't pack a suitcase. He didn't send a message back saying, "On my way." Which, didn't mean, that meant like he was getting ready. He hadn't left the house yet. He just stayed where he was for 2 whole days. And Mary and Martha watched their brother die. What was he doing? For 2 days? Come on. Does he not love his friend? What was he doing for 2 days? Now, if we read, which we will, the whole story, I think we can tell he was praying. But the disciples were right. The Pharisees did want to stone him, and surely Jesus wouldn't go back to Jerusalem just yet. Like, Bethany is a town, that's where Lazarus lived, 2 miles from Jerusalem. It's too close. It's too close. And we know what happened the last time Jesus was in Jerusalem, because we talked about the woman caught in adultery last week, and the chapter started with them wanting to stone her, and it ended with them wanting to stone Jesus. And in fact, they did try to stone Jesus, but he escaped. And then his disciples are like, "Bad idea, Jesus. Why would you go to there? You will die." And I think it's, this is the story of Lazarus, right? But I think it's also a story about Jesus, and we have to think about both of them, because when Jesus, at the end of the chapter, he thanks God, said, "Thank the Father for hearing my prayer." It seems like he's referring to the prayers that he prayed during those silent 2 days in the wilderness across the river. Because he was praying for Lazarus, but also maybe for his own wisdom and guidance for going back to Jerusalem. Because what Jesus was going to do for Lazarus would be great for Lazarus and terrible for Jesus. Because it is one of the principal reasons why the authorities were then like, "We have got to get this guy out of here." But on the other hand, it would be the most powerful sign yet in all the sequence of signs that John puts through in his gospel of what Jesus' life and work is all about. This is how it's almost at the climax. We're on this trajectory. So the time of waiting was vital, and Jesus talks all through the gospel of like, I have to be with the Father, I have to go pray, I have to meditate, I have to be by myself, like over and over again. Because he had to have space to explore God's will and be in this intimate union that he so often spoke of. Only then did he actually act. And I think this story is about all the ways that Jesus surprises people and just completely overturns their expectations. He didn't go when the sisters asked him to, even though they're BFFs. He did eventually go, even though the disciples were like, don't go. And then he spoke about sleep, and the disciples were like, well, if he's sleeping, then he's fine. But he didn't mean sleep, he meant death. But the disciples thought he meant sleep, and everyone was confused. Honestly, as per usual, when Jesus talks. There's so many stories of like, Jesus said this, and the disciples were confused. And the crowds did not understand. And then in the middle, in verse 9, he has this weird little saying about people who walk in the daytime don't trip, but people who walk in the nighttime do. And the disciples were confused, parentheses. Just like a subtext. But it seems like Jesus meant that the only way to know where you're going is to follow him. Because if you try to steer your course by your own understanding, then you're going to trip up because you'll be in the dark. But if you stick close to Jesus and see the situation from Jesus' point of view, then, even if it means like days or years of puzzling, wondering why nothing is happening the way you want it to, you'll come out in the right place at the end. And the end of the passage, this is like a rabbit trail, so you're welcome. I love little rabbit trails. The end of the passage introduces us to one of John's great minor characters, Thomas. What do we call Thomas? Doubting Thomas. No, we should not call Thomas Doubting Thomas. We should call Thomas Reasonable, Logical Person Thomas. Because everyone was like, Jesus was raised from the dead. He was like, really? Let me prove it. But this is the first time we meet him. And he's loyal, and sometimes he's like slow to understand things, but he's determined to go on putting one foot in front of the other and follow Jesus and be with Jesus and support Jesus no matter where it takes him. And he speaks these words, let's go to and die with him. They don't die yet. Oh, but Jesus dies. It's not a spoiler. Y'all know what happens. But like the disciples do not die, right? They don't die yet, but it's certainly the right response, right? Because if there's so much we don't understand, and our hopes and our plans often get thwarted. But if we go with Jesus, even into death, we'll be walking in the light, which helps us make sense of this confusing, well, if you're in the daytime / nighttime. This is one of those side notes that Jarrett will probably kill me for later. But have you ever seen BBC's Talking Animals?
What?
I know. There's a bird. It's like basically a comedy voiceover of animals doing animal stuff. And there's a bird that's like going like this.
Daytime.
With its wings, and then being like this. And it's like, nighttime, daytime. Anyways, I apologize. I'm sorry. No more side notes. You may continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was still thinking about that. Yep, you're good.
When Jesus arrived in Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many other people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." "Yes," Martha said. "He will rise when everyone else rises at the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never ever die. Do you believe this, Martha?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God."
Here's a question. When was the last time you said, if only? Whatever it is that made you say that, I feel like we all know that sense that makes us queasy a little bit of wanting to turn the clock back. And this is where we are in verse 21, because Martha says, if only, to Jesus. She just knows if only Jesus had been there, Lazarus would have been cured, he would not have died. Also, she knows that it's taken Jesus 2 days longer than she wanted it to for him to show up. Lazarus, however, as we discover, has been dead for how many days? 3. So Jesus wouldn't have made it anyways. But he might have made it. Like if only she had gotten the message out sooner. If only he had come really fast. Instead of dawdling for 2 days on the other side of the river. If only only Jesus had been there, he could have fixed this whole thing, and now Lazarus is dead. But instead of looking at the past and inviting her to think about what might have been, Jesus tells her to look at the future. And then he tells her to imagine that the future is somehow brought into the present. Because he says your brother will rise again. That's a nice phrase, I guess. Martha knows, as well as Jesus, as a common Jewish teaching. There's going to be a resurrection at the end, a new heavens and a new earth. All of God's followers will be raised. From the beginning of time to the end of time, they will all be raised, and will live in the new heavens and the new earth, which is a world just like ours, just without all the ugliness and pain and grief and death. And Martha believes this. But her flat response in verse 24 shows it's not really all that comforting. She's like, yes, Lord, everyone will be raised at the end of time. That would be like if someone you love dies and then everyone's like, well, you'll see them again in heaven. So unhelpful. But she's not prepared for Jesus' response because Jesus says the future has actually come into the present. The new creation, and with it the resurrection, has come forward from the end of time into the middle of time. And Jesus has not just come from heaven to earth, he's come from God's future into our present, into the mess of the world we all know. She says, yes, I get it, everyone's going to be raised at the end of time. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Resurrection isn't just a doctrine or a future hope. It's a person. And he's standing in front of Martha. Jesus is inviting Martha to exchange her if only. Like, if only you'd been here, I can't believe you weren't here. God, Jesus, you didn't care about us at all. And Martha, as we will see, she then runs to tell her sister Mary that Jesus has arrived. We know that Martha is like an active, busybody person. She's very much like, she's busy all the time. She had to hurry off and meet Jesus. The minute she heard he was coming, she's like, I'm going to meet him on the road and tell him what I think of him. I'm going to confront him directly, immediately. And, some of us are like that. We just cannot wait. We have to tell Jesus immediately what we think of his strange ways. But if you're like that, if you have an if only in your heart, well, then act like Martha. Jesus didn't tell Martha she was wrong. Run off to meet Jesus. Ask him why he didn't show up sooner. Tell him the problem. Why did you allow this awful thing to happen? And then be prepared for a surprising response. Because no one can know what the response will be because it is surprise. But we know what shape it will take. Jesus will meet your problem with some part of God's future that can and will burst into the present time, into the mess and the grief with good news, with hope and with new possibilities. And the key to it all is faith. Jesus is bringing God's new world into existence. But it doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't just knock people over like a tsunami and sweep them up. The key to sharing in a new world is faith. Believing in Jesus. Trusting that he is God's Messiah. The one who comes into the world, into our pain and our sorrow and our death, and does something altogether new and surprising.
Then she returned to Mary. She called Mary aside from the mourners and told her, the teacher is here and wants to see you. So Mary immediately went to him. Jesus had stayed outside the village at the place where Martha met him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. So they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked them. They told him, Lord, come and see. Then Jesus wept. The people who were standing nearby said, see how much he loved him? But some said, this man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?
To me, section 3 is actually the point of the whole story. Lazarus being raised from the dead is not the point. Which it shouldn't. The fourth act is the point, right? No. This is where, if you remember anything, I want you to remember this section. Most of the world grieves at a funeral like they did for Lazarus. There's a procession, and there's sad music, and there's weeping and wailing in front of everyone, loudly. And in the Western world, we grieve privately. We don't want to bother anyone. We pretend that everything is okay. And perhaps the old way is kinder. Because it doesn't do any good to hide grief or pretend that it doesn't exist. Paul later in the New Testament in 1 Thessalonians says he doesn't want us to grieve like people who have no hope. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't grieve at all, which is how many Christians have taken this, especially in the last 100 years. It doesn't mean you shouldn't grieve at all. It means there's two kinds of grief. There's a hopeless grief and a hopeful grief, but the hopeful grief is still bitter. And as if to rub this point in, we find Jesus in this passage bursting into tears. John has such a deep meaning here. I think to begin with, we cannot be content with seeing Jesus' tears just as evidence that he was a real human being. That's no doubt true. But in Jesus' world, like nobody in his world imagined that he was anything other than a real human being with flesh and blood. He was born, after all. It's only us who spend time like arguing about humanity and divinity and kenosis and could God be human and this is possible and can it exist in one person. They were like, obviously Jesus is a human. Rather, throughout the whole gospel, John is telling us something much more striking. That when we look at Jesus, no less when we look at Jesus in tears, we are seeing not just a flesh and blood human being, but the Word made flesh. God made flesh. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word, through whom the universe was made, weeps at the grave of his friend. I think only if we stop and actually think about that will we understand the full mystery of what John is trying to tell us. Only when we put away our high and dry pictures of God somewhere up there, overseeing everything, not caring, and replace them with a picture of Jesus, who is God, who is crying, with the pain and the grief of the world's crying, will we discover what the word God actually even means. Jesus cries at the moment he sees Mary in tears. He does not sweep onto the scene and declare that tears are irrelevant, because Lazarus will be raised from the dead. Even though, as his actions and words will soon make very clear, Jesus has no doubt what he's going to do. He has no doubt about what God will do through him. There's still no sense of triumphalism. There's no sense of someone coming in with a secret formula to fix everything. It will show how clever he is. He's not like Mary. Don't bother crying because Lazarus is going to be alive in a second. Instead, to use biblical language, there's a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief, sharing and bearing it with us to the point of tears. And we can think with what grief in Jesus' own heart was stirred up. Obviously for his friend, right? But could it also be grief for another death to come? His own? We think, oh, Jesus went willingly to death. That's fine. But yeah, but also that means he never got to be with his family in the way that he was ever again. He never got to be with his disciples and his dear friends in the way that he knew them ever again. And couldn't the man who did so many miracles have brought it about that he didn't have to die? Couldn't the man who saved so many others save himself? And I think John tells us 1,000 different ways in the book. Only through his death, through Jesus sharing in the common fate of all humans, that the world can be changed. But there is a hint of what will come. Where have you laid him? Jesus asked Mary. And she says, come and see, which is a callback. We read it, we're like, oh yeah, come and see. She's going to show him the grave. But the very first disciples, at the beginning of John, they see Jesus and they're like, what a weird guy. So intrigued. They're like, where are you staying, Jesus? We want to know more about you. And he's like, come and see. And then he says, where is the Where is it? Where's the place of pain? And Mary says, come and see. It's the simplest of invitations, right? But it is the core of Christian faith, I think. Come and see. When's the last time we said, come and see to God? And let God in. All tears. To the place of our deepest grief and sorrow. So that we can then hear Jesus' response. You come and see. As he takes us through the sorrow to a place where there's life and love and resurrection.
Jesus was still upset as he arrived at the tomb. A cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. Roll the stone aside, Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible. Jesus responded, didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe? So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me. Then Jesus shouted, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. Many other people who were with Mary believed in Jesus when they saw this happen, but some went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done.
Give Joseph a hand. Thanks, Frank. When Jesus raised Jairus' daughter in Mark 5, he told everyone to get out of the room. And when it was over, he told the people not to tell anyone. And now, he stands in front of a large crowd and puts his reputation on the line and shouts at Lazarus to come out. And he comes out. Terrifying. And actually, this may be a controversial opinion, but the most extraordinary thing in this bit of scripture to me is not that Lazarus comes out. It's what isn't said. It's what's left for us to discover, like archaeologists digging. To begin with, we have an unanswered comment from Martha. Good old Martha. Always fussing. She's like, take the stone away. And she's like, Jesus, you cannot. The smell. Jesus, you're embarrassing me. Jesus, it will smell so bad. He has been in there for 3 days decomposing. And Jesus doesn't answer her except with a weird, very oblique comment. If she believes, she will see God's glory. But the question is, what has happened to Lazarus' body? Will it have actually started to decay, turn into human soup? The other unexplained bit of evidence is what Jesus says when they do take the stone away. He doesn't pray that he will now have the power to raise Lazarus from the dead. He thanks God that he has heard him. Perhaps you can follow this thread. What John has omitted, but surely wants us to understand, is that when they took the stone away, something was missing. And what is it that would have been missing? The smell. And from that moment on, Jesus knew that Lazarus' body was not dead, or perhaps was dead no longer. It had not begun to decompose. But how did he get to that conclusion? There's only one conclusion I can draw, and I feel like it's very striking. In the 2 silent days on the river, before he told anyone, before he packed a bag, before he hurried to meet the emergency, before he even told the disciples, he was praying. Praying that though Lazarus would die, he'd be preserved. Praying that when they arrived, the body in the tomb would be whole and complete and ready to be summoned back to new life. And then when they took the stone away, and there was no smell, he knew that his prayer had been answered. So the question I want you to think about this week, perhaps to ponder, what parts of your life have you been praying for? Praying that even though it seems like there's pain and death and grief, that there might actually be life growing there again. Praying that what you're afraid of, the stench, the terrible smell of hopelessness and loss, will disappear as Jesus looks at all the dark parts in our hearts and souls. Praying perhaps for the strength to say, come and see, to Jesus. As we take him to all the parts we don't want to show anyone. And for Jesus to say softly back, you come and see. As he shows us a brilliant, hopeful future, full of light, and life, and grace, and belonging, and resurrection. Two more songs. So I invite you to stand and think about this question as we sing.
You love is enduring, like a ring of solid gold, like a light that is tested, like a covenant of old. Your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon. With mercy for today, faithful you have been. Faithful
outside the door because it is named that way because it's there. So get a sticker, they're free. Was it like a weird announcement possibly? I don't know. So if you have babies, you will know this person. Her name is Amber. She's been our nursery director for 2 years now, like pretty much since we started. She is a treasure. We love her dearly. And she is moving on. Very sad. But, first of all, just so you know, there's nothing weird happening with her. She's not in fights with us. She didn't like sign that we don't agree with, or at least not that. Okay. I know, like, this is where a lot of us. Okay. There is no animosity or troubles whatsoever. She's just moving on to another chapter in her life, and we love her very, very dearly. And we're gonna have a party on the last day that she's here to celebrate her and send her off. But that doesn't mean hiring a person to be our nursery director. This is a part-time position, like 3 hours a week. It is paid. Okay, so if you know anyone who might be interested in that, doing that every single Sunday, it is compensated. There does have to be background checks, and if we would probably like a reference or two as well, because babies are very important. We take that very seriously. So just put that out there. If you know anyone, I'd love to talk to them before we start hunting the vast unknown people. So just put that bug in your ear. The event for the movie is not up technically on yet. It's like, is it? Did you do it without me? Did you see the draft that I copied from the previous movie and didn't edit? I was just like, save draft. Okay, so it is on the website. You should go to this movie. It's $5. Do you know that Josiah and I went to see Batman? And matinee, mind you. $50? Back in my day, that was the price of a real movie ticket. Okay, that's good. But definitely, you should come hang out. It's gonna be a great time. Come to Three Daughters. They have food, they have beer, they have seltzer and other stuff, and they have non-alcoholic beverages if that's your. And then go to Different Church to sign up for the movie. And if you would like to support us, you can do that as well. And we exist only because people want us to. We are not tied to any organization. We are here. You're happy about that? Yes. Jared raised his hand. What? Okay, so what happened was we love our babies and we would like to have an Easter egg hunt for them, but there's not really space in here to do that. So instead we're having Easter stations where they can get like eggs and candy and like go to little stations. But we need non-parents to man a station after church for like 20 minutes. We have 3 volunteers so far. We probably need like 3 more. Do it with a friend and you will get to see my baby. Also, is there anything better as a kid than free candy?
Why is that just good children?
Yeah.
What?
I said, why is that just children?
It's not just children. It's not just children, but I won't have free candy for all the adults until the kids have gotten their fill. And let me tell you, their appetite is bottomless. I gave Nova like a little bite of chocolate yesterday, and she instantly was like, "Mom," which means more. Give it to me in my mouth right now. Okay, so enough. Let's pray, and we shall reconvene next Sunday. Go forth in good company, loved ones, for even the rocks cry out of God's saving love. The flowers sing of justice. The oceans roar against oppressive systems. Skylines celebrate our holy interdependence, and trees rejoice for all that is springing into life. Christ is all around us and within us, calling into being a hope that springs eternal. Come and see. Come and see that death has been replaced with life. Amen. Thanks for being here, y'all. Happy Sunday. See you next week. Woo!